I wrote a book about a year and a half ago, I guess it was, and I did media for the book. And the reason I bring that up is because the publicist got me what they call Christian media, and then for church folk, Christian radio and publications. And then they also got me secular media for country stations or talk radio stations and stuff like that. And when I look back upon the whole experience of interviews, it was interesting to me what each particular side of the aisle focused upon. The Christian side would ask me pretty much the same question. It was all about family. How long have you been married? What do you love most about your wife? That was a question I asked a lot. What do you love most about your wife? And the secular side was more interested in how an atheist from the south side of Chicago goes from living in Chicago and working predominantly comedy clubs and casinos and nightclubs for 18 years around the country, and then all of a sudden goes into work in churches. And they couldn't get their head around that. And so I'll answer that. Basically, for me, I crawled in 20 years ago. It'll be, by God's grace, this September, 20 years. I'll have been a sober for 20 years. And I crawled into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Basically, I just wanted to stop drinking. My father, it was interesting, my father, 2 years into that walk of Alcoholics Anonymous, my father took me aside one day. My dad wrestled with alcohol his entire life up at that point, and it said to me, what was the catalyst? What was the catalyst that got you to quit? Because my dad knew enough about alcoholism to know that something profound had to happen in a man's life to get him to stop drinking. And I had been, arrested, obviously, in 1982. I'm a felon. Did I mention that? For me, it was I beat my 6-month-old son in a crib. And I don't ever want to forget that night. It was probably as far down as I want to sink into the depths of what I consider hell on earth. I was all rummed up, drinking rum, and I was cocained up, and I was sitting in my office doing more and more of each, trying to figure out where all this misery was coming from in my life. And, I was absolutely just downright miserable, hateful. And my conclusion was that all of my trouble started when I got married. All my trouble started when I got married and had children. And if I can get rid of this unit in the other rooms there, then I could be left alone. I could just send them money, and then I can go do what I want to do. And all this guilt and shame and humiliation that seemed to permeate my entire being would leave me. So here's how I came up with a conclusion on how I was going to do this. And I am not exaggerating, folks. I figured if I dragged my wife out of bed and I beat her, she'd have no other choice but to divorce me. Because I didn't have the courage to ask for a divorce. But if she asked for it, then a couple years down the line, if it was a mistake, I could blame her. And it made sense to me. The more rum I drank and the more coke I did, all of a sudden it became very clear. And I walk into my wife's bedroom, and our bedroom, and I'm standing over my wife. Now this crack of consciousness comes to me, this little glimmer of there's something wrong with this. I mean, you can sit in an office and plan these things out, and all of a sudden they make perfect sense to you. And then when it comes to do the act, I'm standing there, and this consciousness comes, and you wonder where that comes from. But then my son started crying. And I had to quiet my son because it was interrupting the whole plan. And I went in there, and I just went, shh, be quiet, and he wouldn't be quiet. And then I ended up just pounding on him. And then Tammy woke up and came in. And to this day, I look back on that, and I think of the scripture that says the sins of the father are passed to the sons. That's done. That boy took a beating for his mother. And my wife took him into the bedroom. She sat on the end of the bed and fed him. That boy got beat because he was hungry and wanted a meal. And I'm talking shame and humiliation when I finally realized what I had done. When I walked into the bedroom and saw him being fed. I heard a pastor once a few years back say this: every man needs to get downwind from himself. Well, that night, God gave me a good dose of the kind of man I was. And I saw myself, a glimpse of what kind of husband I was, and what kind of father I was, and what kind of I really stunk. And I remember breaking down and telling my wife, if you don't take me to Alcoholics Anonymous, I won't go. And if I don't go, I don't see us making this. I didn't tell her what I was about to do 10 minutes earlier. So she takes me to Alcoholics Anonymous. They tell me to pray. And I said, to what? They said, find something in this universe that's bigger than you. The only thing that exceeded my arrogance was my ignorance. I couldn't think of anything bigger than me in the universe. And I certainly wasn't getting on my knees to pray to this thing that I made up. I said, I'm fine. As long as I don't drink, I'll be fine. And one night, my wife and I got into an argument, and I'm not making this up, over a piece of cheese about that big. And it's funny now, but I'm telling you, this is the kind of couple we were. And she wanted me to eat this piece of cheese that was sitting in the fridge for God knows how long before I opened up a new package. And every man in this room will understand, I know my chain of logic in this discussion. I said, you know, baby, if you want it, you can eat it. But you see, I'm going to open a new one up because that's the one I want. Oh, so it's good enough for me, but it's not good enough for you. And I go, no, here. And I took it and I threw it into the trash. And I go, see, it's not good enough for any human consumption. So now we can go eat. And she took it out of the trash and she said, I don't understand what you have. And it escalated to the point, and I am not exaggerating, I was standing on a kitchen chair looking down on my wife, spitting out of my mouth, just berating her about how stupid she is. And when things calmed down, I walked into the bedroom to apologize for the 987th time. And she said, yeah, I know you're sorry. And I said, no, I came to tell you we need help. And you can come or you don't, but I'm going to a therapist. There's something wrong with this. Something happens to me, and I don't know what. But I'm going to find out. We can't live this way. So I go to a therapist, and she says, why are you here? And I said, because I feel like I'm going to hurt somebody in my family really bad. And she said, I believe you. I go, you should. And we started with that, and she gave me Road Less Traveled, a book. And I started reading. When you have a compulsive, addictive personality, and I discovered reading. And I'm telling you, I never read a book in my life until I was 31 years old and got sober. It's amazing how much free time you have when you're not nursing hangovers and, you know. You can only bowl so many frames. And I read voraciously. To one point, my therapist said, you got to stop reading. You're cramming so much information in your head. But I wanted to figure it out, folks.